Joining us now from the courthouse in Denver is the former Chief Counsel for Nominations of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, Mike Davis, who also heads the Article 3 project. He was my guest on WABC Radio this weekend. Was a great show. Mike Davis, thank you so much for joining us on the Stone Zone.
Thank you for having me, Roger.
I know your time is limited, so we're going to get right to it. Explain to our listeners, if you will, what they are attempting to do in Colorado, what their legal theory is, and what the truth of the matter is.
So these Democrats impeached President Trump twice for nonsense. They indicted him 4 times for non-crimes. They even brought a civil fraud charge in New York for the non-fraud of a businessman paying back Wall Street banks in full, on time, as agreed, in interest. And this Democrat lawfare and election interference is backfiring on them. President Trump is now on the path to beat President Biden like a drum on November 5th, 2024. So they are resorting to a legal Hail Mary. They are going to the post-Civil War 14th Amendment. They're looking at Section 3 to disqualify President Trump from being on the ballot in Colorado because they're claiming that he engaged in insurrection on January 6th. And they're using this legal theory in a blue state in Colorado. They went to this objectively biased Democrat judge in Denver, this Sarah Wallace, who's a Democrat donor. She donated to a political action committee that sole purpose is to go after Republicans who supported President Trump on January 6th. Somehow she thinks that she's not biased after President Trump's lawyers raised a recusal motion and said that she is biased, or at least appears to be biased, by making this donation. How the hell can you donate to an anti-Trump January 6th PAC and then turn around and sit on a trial for Trump for January 6th? It just doesn't make sense. She denied that motion this morning. She said that she could be fair. She says she made the donation, but she doesn't remember making it, but she could be fair. She said that's not the legal standard. Her subjective belief on whether she could be fair is not the legal standard. It is objectively, what would the public think if they saw this donation? Would the public think that she could be fair? And the answer is hell no. Regardless, they're marching forward, and they're trying to simply take President Trump off the ballot in Colorado, a blue state, and that they're going to use that precedent in other states across the country, in swing states, maybe like Michigan, to try to take him off the ballot there. And so if you can't beat President Trump on the ballot box on November 5th, 2024, you're simply going to disqualify him under this bogus legal theory that prior courts have said is a bogus legal theory.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no conviction of President Donald Trump for insurrection. He hasn't been charged with that. He hasn't been tried for that. He hasn't been convicted of that. So this is all based on the subjective opinion, I guess, of the Colorado Secretary of State, no?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Roger. And that's the point. Back when this Civil War amendment was passed, the whole point of Section 3, it was because Confederate sympathizers and supporters who engaged in the Civil War insurrection were winning office. They were winning federal offices. So in order to stop that, they wanted to make sure that they weren't these Confederate sympathizers weren't undermining the post-Civil War construction in the Union. So they added Section 3 to the Constitution to disqualify them from federal office. But there is a court case from 1869 from Chief Justice Samuel Chase that's very clear. There's a case that's directly on point. It's the controlling case. If you want to disqualify under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, it's not self-executed. You can't just have some local judge like this Sarah Wallace in Denver, or some Secretary of State in Colorado or New Hampshire or Michigan. They can't just do it by fiat or even through a trial. What you have to do is Congress has to pass a federal criminal statute for insurrection or rebellion, which Congress did in 1870. It's still on the books. The current version was updated in 1948. You charge the defendant under that federal criminal statute. You have to have evidence You have to have evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. You have to have a unanimous federal jury. You need a federal judge to convict, and you need the federal appellate courts to uphold that conviction, affirm that conviction on appeal. At that point, then you can seek to disqualify under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. But that is the only way you can disqualify under the 14th Amendment. The qualifications for president are laid out in the Constitution, and the disqualification for insurrection and rebellion is clearly laid out. It's through a federal criminal statute. It's not through some trial with Democrat activists and Democrat lawyers and Democrat judges and Democrat hellholes like New York, D.C., Atlanta, or now even Denver.
So my guess, of course, is that we're going to see a succession of these. I think you're exactly right. They're trying to set a precedent in a favorable state, in a favorable court, before a favorable judge. If the judge, which seems likely, just guessing here, should end up ruling against the president and remove him from the ballot in Colorado, where can he go for relief?
Well, then what happens is this is an election challenge under Colorado law. So President Trump can immediately appeal this to the Colorado Supreme Court on an expedited basis. The problem is that Democrats control the Supreme Court. They control every statewide office in Colorado. They control the Supreme Court. They control the courts of appeals. They control the Denver District Court. Elections have consequences. And since 2006, when Democrats went to all-mail ballots and legalized marijuana, and every dirtbag across America, including from New York and California, moved to Colorado, cultural COVID, and changed the place from a red state to a deep blue state, we're going to be dealing with these deep blue Democrat judges. And so this will probably have to get resolved by the Supreme Court of the United States. They have discretionary review. They don't have to take this case, but they must take this case because these are republic-ending tactics by Democrats. If they think they can just take out a presidential candidate, the leading presidential candidate, through lawfare and election interference, and people are going to be fine with that, that's just not the case.
There's also, it seems to me, to be timing issues. In other words, by the time this could be adjudicated, this election could be over. And then the point would be moot. No?
Well, I mean, that could be the case. And that is why the Supreme Court must step up and decide this case. Because I'll tell you what, if the Supreme Court lets this happen and they try to find their little weaselly ways to avoid this, like standing or mootness or political question or whatever weasel legal theory they use to get out of this, the Supreme Court will lose all legitimacy. From the left already hates them, and they're going to have the right hate them too. So it's critically important that the Supreme Court, they have lifetime tenure, they have pay protection, they're not supposed to care about the politics. These Supreme Court justices will have to put on their big boy pants. They're going to have to look at the controlling precedent on point by Chief Justice Samuel Chase from 1870, very long established precedent. They're going to have to apply that law, and they're going to have to say that this Democrat lawfare and election interference is unconstitutional, it's illegal, it's un-American.
I don't know the answer to this question. Who represented President Trump in today's proceedings?
So Scott Gessler is the last Republican Secretary of State in Colorado. He's very well versed in Colorado election law. He's a very smart guy. He went to Michigan Law School. I've known Scott for a long time. I actually represented him when he was the Colorado Secretary of State, and I was a real lawyer in private practice in Colorado for 10 years. He's a good guy. President Trump is very well represented, but unfortunately, when you have a biased judge, like we have a clearly biased Judge Sarah Wallace, again, who donated to a January 6th PAC going after Trump supporters, and now she's sitting on a January 6th trial going after Trump. Trump's not going to get a fair shake from this biased judge. This is going to have to get resolved by the Colorado Supreme Court, which will almost certainly side with the Democrats. So this will have to get resolved by the Supreme Court of the United States.
Mike, last night on a Sunday night, Judge Chutkan in D.C. Essentially reaffirmed her gag order or re-established her gag order against President Trump in that proceeding. Tell us your opinion on that.
Well, it is egregiously unconstitutional. It is un-American. It's unsurprising that Biden special counsel, this deranged special counsel Jack Smith, and this obnoxiously partisan Obama DC judge Tanya Shucken teamed up to put this gag order on a criminal defendant. It is un-American. They did the same thing to you, Roger, and it set a very bad precedent. The First Amendment protects Americans, including criminal defendants, not the government. The Sixth Amendment protects the criminal defendant's right to a fair trial, not the government. The local DC criminal rules, I think it's 57.7, to which Judge Shucken cites to impose her illegal gag order, that local rule says it's to protect the accused, the defendant. They are turning the Constitution from a shield that protects us into a sword that the government uses to come after us. It doesn't get worse than this. If there's anyone who needs to be able to speak out against the judge, the courtroom staff, the prosecutor, the witnesses, the process, it is a criminal defendant going through his criminal process. And to say that this is a prior restraint, an unconstitutional and illegal prior restraint on President Trump's free speech rights, just like it was on yours. And they're saying they're trying to protect the process and they're trying to protect witnesses. We have obstruction of justice criminal statutes on the books right now. If President Trump obstructs justice, they can charge him with obstruction. They know he's not obstructing justice. They know he's not intimidating witnesses. This is to gag President Trump. This is lawfare. This is election interference, because they know that President Trump is turning this lawfare to his advantage, and he's currently beating President Biden like a drum. President Trump's lawyers need to seek immediate appeal of this gag order, seek a stay of Judge Shucken's proceedings, go to the DC Circuit, and go to the Supreme Court if you have to.
All right. We very much appreciate Mike Davis reaching us really directly from the Colorado courthouse to respond to us on those events and tumultuous events there today. Mike, thank you so much for joining us here on the Stone Zone.
Thank you.